What's going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. And coming up on today's show, we're going to spend some time talking about Shamar Stewart, obviously Cincinnati's pick at number 17 overall in the first round. Some draft rumors have kind of circulated in regards to Shamar Stewart after the NFL draft has obviously taken place. Going to be spending some time talking about that. Also, some Dax Hill conversation. A couple of days ago, we talked about Cincinnati exercising his fifth-year option. Going to dive into that a little bit more and have my thoughts on that. And also, Zack Moss has a new restructured contract. Going to be breaking down those details here on today's show as well. Now, if you are ready for the 2025 season to start, obviously a ways away, but if you're ready, like the show for me right now. I know we're all fired up here post-draft. Team looks like it's heading in the right direction, particularly on the offensive side of the football. If you are hyped and you are ready for that 2025 NFL season, like today's video for me right now. All right, so we got some rumors circulating about the Lions trying to trade up for Shamar Stewart on draft night. Obviously, the Lions had a very successful regular season and picked later on in the first round. And there's been some talk that, hey, they were trying to move up either with Cincinnati or ahead of Cincinnati to snag a guy in which they believe to be a star pass rusher in the NFL in Shamar Stewart. Mike Payton of A to Z Sports does a nice job of breaking this down. Let's get into what exactly Payton had to write for A to Z Sports. He said, I think the Lions tried to trade up for Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart on Thursday night. And this is what Brad Holmes had to say. Of course, Brad Holmes is the Detroit Lions general manager. He said, I don't need to get into specifics, but there were times we made attempts to get one. They get picked before and you couldn't get up. It takes two to trade. And Mike Payton of A to Z Sports followed that up by saying this. So there's the proof that the Lions attempted to trade up for one. Why do we think it was Stewart? It's all based on the top 30 visits. The Lions really seem to love picking the guys they have in those visits. TeSlaa and Tyleik Williams are more proof of that. We'll probably find Tate, Ratledge, and Miles Frazier came in too at some point. The Lions had just 3 edge rushers in for 30 visits, and only one of them was a first-round guy. That was Stewart. He wound up going 17th to the Cincinnati Bengals. You've had a couple of days here to digest the pick and really think it through, right? Kind of calm down a little bit after the NFL draft. I've asked you this question before, but I'm asking it to you guys again. Grade the Shamar Stewart pick for me in the comment section of today's show, A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know. It is the pinned comment of today's video, so if that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. You could ignore it, take advantage of it down in the comments. Let us know what you think. The further we get away from the draft, the more I like this selection for the Cincinnati Bengals. If you were tuned in with any of our coverage, obviously it was on-demand videos, not any live coverage during the NFL draft, but as the pick went down, I had my concerns with the pick, right? But as we get further away, I'm starting to fall in love a little bit more with this selection from Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor, and company. As we could tell after that report there from A to Z Sports, lots of teams had interest in Shamar Stewart. And you hear people talking around the league. I don't think Detroit was the only team that was sitting there considering, either taking Shamar Stewart 1 or moving up to get him. There were some rumblings that, hey, San Francisco thought about taking him. Obviously, they went with Mykel Williams instead. Other teams picking inside the top 10 had some, pondered taking Shamar Stewart in the draft. Now, it's still very risky, all right? Let's all be very clear here. We've talked about the production at length, or lack thereof, I should say, from Shamar Stewart during his time in College Station. And obviously Cincinnati on the defensive side of the ball, they need their first-round pick to come in and contribute immediately. We all know how god-awful the defense was last season, but the upside really is appealing. I mean, you got people just talking that really know their stuff, really know ball, talking about Shamar Stewart, saying, like, this could be, I hate the phrase generational talent, but I'm going to drop it right here, a generational talent type guy for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And, freak athlete. We talked about it at length when we were down at the Combine in Indianapolis. People were absolutely raving about his traits, his skill, his size, his speed. Production wasn't there. Can Al Golden and this defensive staff get the most out of him? And, again, this can't be something where it's like, oh, yeah, they got it out of him, but it took 3 years. No, it's got to take a couple of months. And, with the uncertainty around Trey Hendrickson, the fact that, hey, he's probably going to hold out of training camp, when that rolls around here in a couple of months, he's going to have a lot of opportunity to get a lot of reps. Hopefully he can make the most of it. Hopefully he can grow enough to be able to have an impact on this team in 2025. We'll continue their show here in a second, but do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals Draft Hats are still available. Obviously, the draft is in the rearview mirror. That doesn't mean you can't get some Cincinnati Bengals Draft Hats courtesy of our friends over at Fanatics. The ones they had this year, really for all the teams in the NFL, really did a tremendous job this year, and those are still available. That's chatsports.com/Bengals Draft Hats, and we will put that in the comment section and the description of today's show. All right, let's talk Dax Hill on today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. Broke it down a couple of days ago, letting everybody know, hey, the Bengals are exercising the fifth-year option of Dax Hill, which, by the way, I believe to totally be the right call. I think this is the right move from Duke Tobin and the Cincinnati Bengals personnel staff, saying, you know what, we're going to bring him back. We're going to guarantee his contract over the next 2 years and hopefully keep him in Cincinnati for the long term. And Zach Taylor spoke about that the other day. As far as Dax Hill, who he is as a player, and what this means for the football team, saying, I'm really excited about Dax's future. We see an ascending player who attacks each day the right way. I can't wait to see him back on the field making plays for us this season. Another opportunity, you guys get involved here with our show at Bengals Breakdown. Are you happy the Bengals are exercising Hill's option? Let me know. Be honest with me. Type Y for yes or N for no. Obviously, Dax Hill did not play a ton in 2024. We heard Duke Tobin at the Combine say, man, he really was getting ready to erupt before this injury. And if you watched the first 5 games of the season, you really saw a guy that was settling back in as a cornerback. Obviously, when Cincinnati took him in 2022, they took him as a safety, and he did that for a couple of years, and it was kind of like, okay. And then they asked him, you know what, we're going to need you to get back to that cornerback spot and start guarding guys on the outside. And he was doing a tremendous job of that. And by exercising this fifth-year option, that shows you that Cincinnati believes that he is their best young DB, and they believe he can be a guy that can take their defense to the next level. I've said here on this show in the past, Dax Hill doesn't get hurt, he might make the playoffs. And that's kind of a bold statement to make because it's just one player that, hadn't really proven a lot until the season started in 2024. And I thought he really was taking steps in the right direction, really doing a great job in coverage, being in the right places at the right time, and also was a very willing tackler, which I think is very important out of any cornerback in the National Football League. And I thought Hill was doing a tremendous job of that, albeit in a small sample size, before that season-ending injury. I thought now would be a good time to kind of look back in the past and see what Cincinnati has done here of late over the last decade or so with recent guys that they drafted in the first round and what they did with their fifth-year options. Hills obviously has been exercised. Now, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, both those guys reached extensions before they had to play on that option, and rightfully so. That was well done by the Bengals front office. Jonah Williams, of course, is no longer with the Cincinnati Bengals, but that was exercised. Billy Price, what a disaster that was. That was declined. Good call there. And an even bigger disaster, John Ross. In 2017, that was declined. William Jackson III, that was exercised. Cedric Ogbuehi, that was declined. And then Darquez Denard was exercised. And also Tyler Eifert was exercised as well at that tight end spot for Cincinnati. So that's a bit of a look in the rearview mirror what Cincinnati has done over the past 10 years or so. Let's transition here to talk Zack Moss. Obviously, a couple of days ago, it was made clear or a couple of weeks ago, I should say, that Zack Moss is going to be back with this football team. There was a lot of uncertainty there, and I think that was probably why, there was concern about, Cincinnati really needs to allocate kind of a top-of-the-end resource of trying to get another running back. And then it was like, Zack Moss is coming back. And we have some details here on what exactly his contract is going to look like. 1 year, 1.7 is the restructured contract, includes $375,000 guaranteed. That is significantly less than he was previously scheduled to earn. It was supposed to be just under $3.5 million in 2025. Cincinnati picks up $1.7 million of cap space because of the move. And that's Spotrac doing a great job breaking that down for us. And I'm really excited for Zack Moss, right? He suffered that neck injury. It happened during practice. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, he just, a little bit of an injury. We'll see him in a couple weeks. No, it was a very, very serious injury for Zack Moss, and there were people around the team questioning whether or not this guy would be able to play football in 2025. So the fact that Cincinnati is signing him to a deal Shows you, A, that he's going to be healthy enough to go out there and be productive for this football team and be able to have an impact as well. And then you add Taj Brooks in the 6th round. You add Samaje Perine in free agency, and obviously you have a bona fide RB1 in Chase Brown. So I think Bengals, as things sit right now, they really have a good running back room, and it was rounded out in the draft. But plenty of excitement that Zack Moss is going to be coming back, and a very, very team-friendly deal that's going to save the Bengals some money against the cap. Make sure you guys hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. That's youtube.com/BengalsTV. Our next goal here is 19,000 subscribers here on the channel, which we are rapidly approaching. Help us out. Also help yourself out by hitting that sub button right now.